discussed this a couple of groups or whatever.
I'm sorry, can you
I want to know what the number is that makes an epidemic. Seriously. I mean, 1 in 10,000 when my son was first diagnosed, it was 1 in 10,000. Okay, now then it went to 1 in 500.
But Harry, they're not talking about incidence versus prevalence. You know,
I just want to know what number equates to epidemic. What number equates to pandemic?
We hit it a long time ago.
Tell me what number, when do we reach epidemic proportions? CDC says it's 1 in 150.
Everybody could get
So,
everybody was
but
worried
you've
about
got, you know, what they can go back and say, and I'm sorry, I know everybody here has a lot more knowledge than I do about this, but what they're saying is, they're saying they go back to the DSM manual, and they're saying that they broadened the criteria for diagnosing it. And that's what all the autism experts are saying, that they've just broadened the criteria. And you know, Mark can
not true.
Speak easily and discuss exactly why that's wrong, very simply. But it also goes back to what Julie was saying, was most reporters don't have the time to look beyond what the experts say.
The reporters can go and find out what
cancer or the word diabetes
right.
for autism.
So maybe Mark.
When do we reach epidemic?
We hit it. Yeah. We hit it a long time ago. But Mark, maybe you can kind of put into a few words, into a brief. And email the parents can say, you know what? No, that's wrong, and this is why, so that anybody can understand that. Because it's very
the best
clear
line I've ever heard is Laura Bono's line. We have seen the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's a train. Which is, you know, I mean, that's pretty.
If I can offer another line, and there's no originality here, all I do is repeat what I heard people say that I think is smart. Back to Age of Autism, it's true. Back to Age of Autism and the story about the Minnesota 13-year-old. Wonderful article, and the comments that followed on that blog were unbelievable. Kim, you wrote that article, right? Lord help us, our kids grow up, right? Thank you.
Here comes the future.
Here comes the future. Getting back to how this affects everybody in the world. This unseen poison generation of children is growing up, and you ain't seen nothing yet. We have an outcry in the media because one 13-year-old boy dares to go to Catholic church, right? You ain't seen nothing yet. Yeah. All of these adults are here. They're emerging into the community. You ain't seen nothing yet. And for anybody who dares to say they've always been there, we never noticed, why then do we have a public outcry when one 13-year-old who is growing up shows up at church? That should wake up anybody who says it's better diagnosis.
This notion that they've always been here, this is one of the great fallacies. We've got to write a book. This is part of our book project.
I was going to make that. I know, but it wasn't me. Somebody blogged it, and I don't remember who. But it's like, if this isn't proof that this isn't better diagnosis, they've always been with us, because now suddenly we're noticing because they're getting big. They're here.
I did a calculation. I try to say this every way I can. I try to think every way I can communicate that it's, you know, that it's obvious that it's a crisis, and it's negligent to ignore it. And all the data scream that it's going up, and there is no data that supports that it's better diagnosis. It's just something that people say to make themselves feel better. But if you believe that it's always been with us, then a population epidemiologist or population statistician once calculated that before 1930, there were 100 billion people born in the history of the world, Homo sapiens, you know, rough calculation. You know, if we, you know, take 30 per 10,000, 60 per 10,000, 70 per 10,000, that means that before Leo Kanner discovered autism, there would have been 300 million, 600 million, 700 million people born in the history of the world with autism. You don't miss these children. You don't miss these people. Where were these people before 1930? They did not exist. And to swallow that line, at some point you have to say, excuse me, when did you turn off your brain? You know, I mean, this just doesn't make any sense.
One of the people in Illinois who argues that autism doesn't exist is coming to the Chicago Tribune Thursday, Bennett Leventhal, and he's speaking to the editorial board, and I can go to the meeting, and I have a chance to ask him questions, and I guarantee in that room no editorial board members will I'm not an expert in autism. I've just written about it more. But my offer is that if anyone has questions they want me to pose to them, I'm happy to. And you can email me. You can email me at jdeerdorf@tribune.com if you want me to.
It's just
I
him
do.
meeting with all the
It's-
editors?
It's Leventhal and 2 other guys. I can't
It's the
remember.
autism program because they're lobbying for $10 million from the
Why do they
Illinois
do
State
that?
What about the
Legislature.
other side of the academic is no
It's
problem.
something they've been researching.
It's just genetic, you know.
Yeah, but
The
anyway.
kids are defective.
Psychiatrist,
Yeah.
so,
All your articles are posted on our list for for a one-stop shop for all of our parents. And the one thing they ask me all the time is how can the media consistently say that, and if this has been covered earlier because I came in late, sorry, how can they consistently say that mercury is out of the vaccine since 2001 when the FDA's own website says it's still in some of the childhood vaccines? And frankly, personally, I don't think it's... Yeah. And I don't think personally that they've changed their manufacturing practices, possibly just the packaging. That's my own personal opinion. How can they consistently say that it's out when it's not? That's the most inaccurate statement possible when the sites that they go to, the CDC, the FDA, where they're getting the other side of the story, they say plainly that the mercury is still in some
Well,
of
to
the
me, the most
vaccines.
concerning thing is actually that pregnant women are a target group for the flu vaccine. And the flu vaccine, 90% of them contain mercury. And so an in utero exposure to the same microgram dosage of thimerosal is far more dangerous than the infant doses. And it's so it's obviously wrong. And one of the things I believe has happened is that the public health authorities have girded their loins to push the flu vaccine.
I hate the flu vaccine. They're so, you can't attack vaccines, it's ridiculous, but yeah.
And so that deliberate misrepresentation is part of the marketing campaign for flu, and it becomes part of the greater good, public health, be a civics, be a good citizen, to get your vaccines to protect grandma,
Even though they don't work.
and the OBs are,
Study after
the
study
OBs
shows
are
they
busy
don't
too.
work. Don't work. That's what it is.
I mean, the OBs are busy too. I mean, they get their standard emails and their standard protocol, and this is what we're doing now. Other people have researched it, and my colleagues say this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is what's best for my people. It's not like these OBs and these pediatricians are trying to hurt kids.
Yeah.
I mean, most of them just don't know. They're doing so many things at once that they just follow. Well, not that they're not at fault. I'm not saying they're not at fault. What I'm saying is
Believe it or
that,
not, they're too damn lazy to read the research.
well, maybe
Don't kid
some
yourself.
of them
They
are.
don't read it. They say, the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics over there in Elk Grove says, vaccines are 100% safe, there's no mercury, blah, blah, blah. Listen, we've all been through that, and I look at them and say, you guys are full of crap.
This is why the performance of the press is so important. This is a policy decision. The policy decision to enforce immunization mandates is a political choice that is then backed up and requires to execute near 100% compliance. There is no other product in the entire civilized society in a free and open market that every consumer must consume. This is the one. It's an exception. And so what you are being asked to accept as a scientific statement is in fact a political decision.
Exactly.
And what we're saying is, in a democracy and a free market, you ought to have free choice about the products, the health products you consume. You ought to have a voice in policy decisions. And in both cases, we're being deprived of those choices by a political posture that is totalitarian.
Did they vaccinate those kids from the cult?
I don't know.
They did not, and according to people who've been emailing me relentlessly, they don't have autism or asthma or anything like that. I'm not sure I want to tackle the cult. I'm not sure I want to jump into that story. I'm having enough trouble with the Amish. But,
No, well, now that they're going back.
yeah.